In a viral video making headlines on various social media platforms, Africa's richest man and the world's richest black man, Aliko Dangote, boldly proclaimed that we can turn Africa into heaven in 5 years. Yes, you heard it right, 5 years. Can you imagine Africa being fully developed and self-sufficient in just 5 years? Here is what Aliko Dangote said.
Actually turn Africa into a heaven in the next 5 years. It doesn't take time.
So
because I mean, you know, like what I keep saying, you need to think big, then you grow big. You think small, you never grow.
Okay, but the reality is right now we're still relying on foreign partners. To create more African banks is going to take some time. So what's your solution?
Well, the solution is that right now people have seen exactly what what they've been doing. We don't expect the international banks to do, but we should also make sure that we have you see, for us to grow, we need a very strong financial institutions. We need to have good manufacturing base. We need to also face agriculture. All the other artificial intelligence and co, they will follow. It's part of the growth. But once we do that, we focus on our own mineral sources, I am telling you, Africa will be totally a different story. You know, people now always come and talk about corruption. Of course, Africa is not the only place that you have corruption. Corruption is all over the place. The only difference is that our corrupt people, when they steal the money, they take it, they fly the money out of the continent. If they continue to invest here, fine, then the economy will grow. I mean, I apologize with respect to maybe countries like Indonesia before. I'm not talking about now. During Suharto, are you saying that there was no corruption? Of course, there was corruption. In all Thailand, corruption everywhere. But they were able to grow just because they did not do what we are doing in Africa, taking the money out of the continent, out of their Asian region. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not saying that I encourage. All what I'm saying is that there's no society, whether it's America, whether it's Europe, everywhere that you think of, there is corruption. But our own is totally different, where now you deprive your country of the money. Yeah. You deprive your family of the money because you won't tell your family you've stolen money. So, you know, you deprive everybody, then you now go and hide the money somewhere. When you die, the money will go into the banking system.
First of all, Dangote is not talking about miracles. He's not asking for divine intervention or some utopian pipe dream. He's asking Africans to believe in Africa, to build financial institutions, manufacturing hubs, agricultural systems, and finally, leap into artificial intelligence. In short, he is calling for a pan-African industrial revolution. But is that even remotely possible in 5 years? We sat down with Mr. Bernard Esibe, a governance analyst and lecturer, to discuss Dangote's statement. According to the expert, Dangote's 5-year time frame is more symbolic than literal, hoping to communicate that a real sense of urgency is paramount if we want Africa's fortunes to turn around for the better.
Arafat, let's be honest, 5 years is not enough to turn Africa into a heaven, especially with the current state of governance, infrastructure, and the mindset. But I believe Dangote's statement is more symbolic than literal. What he's really saying is, we have a capacity to radically shift our trajectory if we get serious enough. It's not the time frame that matters, it's the urgency he is trying to inject into our consciousness. Arafat, if we start now with focus, discipline, courage, 5 years could look like heaven compared to where we are today. It wouldn't be skyscrapers and malls. No, a heavenly Africa would look like access to clean water in every village, affordable food on every table, roads that don't kill dreams, jobs that match our talent, transparent leadership, peaceful elections, and a just system that works for the poor as well as the rich. That's the Africa we are praying for, Arafat. And it's possible, but it takes more than speeches. It takes sacrifice.
Moving on, Aliko Dangote is right that Africa's problem isn't the presence of corruption, it's the absence of reinvestment. The real tragedy is that corrupt elites loot Africa and then stash the money in Swiss accounts rather than recycling it into factories, farms, or even schools. What if every stolen dollar was forced to be spent within the continent? What if the bribes built bridges? What if looted billions built roads or funded innovation labs in Kinshasa, Kigali, or Accra? Here's what Mr. Bernard Isibe had to say about Dangote's thoughts on illicit financial outflows out of the continent and whether elites should be compelled to invest in Africa.
In fact, they are twins, born of the same dysfunctioning parent. Yeah, but Dangote is right in one sense. The tragedy is not just that people steal, it's where the stolen money goes. Imagine if all the stolen billions in offshore accounts were used to build rural hospitals, or maybe agro-processing plants, or even local ICT hubs. The money leaves the continent, you see, and so does the opportunity, Arafat. If we can fix capital flight, we are halfway to solving this corruption.
Dangote also practices what he preaches. Instead of throwing his billions into Silicon Valley like many billionaires would, he poured $20 billion into building the world's largest oil refinery in Lagos. That refinery is already reshaping Africa's energy future, slashing dependence on imported fuel, and even disrupting European oil markets. That's not talk. That's action. In a world obsessed with quick digital wins, Dangote chose industrial grit. He could have become worth $120 billion by investing in Amazon or Google, but instead, he chose Africa. Shouldn't that mean something? But does this mean that we should start compelling all our billionaires to invest in Africa? Should African governments start supporting these billionaires too? Here is what the expert had to say.
Well, it's tempting to say yes, but policy must walk the tightrope between regulation and freedom. You don't want to create laws that scare investors away, but also don't want a system where wealth is extracted without any national benefit. The answer lies in creating incentives, not ultimatums. Give tax breaks for reinvestment. Reward companies that create local jobs. Use policy to seduce, not to strangle. Absolutely. If an African billionaire is willing to reinvest profits, locally, create jobs and reduce our reliance on imports, in fact, why not prioritize them? Foreign investment can be fickle. Local industrialists, if they are, they are patriotic enough, will offer long-term commitment. Trust me on this. But we must also regulate to ensure these local monopolies don't become untouchable empires.
Now, if we're serious about turning Africa into heaven in 5 years, we must ask the hard questions. Are our leaders bold enough to stop exporting raw materials for pennies and instead build the industries that refine them locally? Can we stop the brain drain and begin the brain gain? Can we democratize innovation and decentralize power? And will our youth be empowered to lead, or just used as props in political rallies? The path to heaven isn't paved with mere optimism. It's built with factories, schools, smart policies, and most importantly, belief in ourselves. We've been waiting for others to save us for far too long. But Dangote said, it is us and no one. Africa will either be built by Africans or it won't be built at all. So the next time someone calls this continent cursed, poor, or doomed, just remember this. One of the richest men on earth says we can make it heaven in 5 years. And he is putting his money where his mouth is. Your perspective matters. Do you agree with everything Dangote said about transforming Africa into heaven in 5 years? Do you also agree with the opinions shared by governance analyst and lecturer Mr. Bernard Isibe? Share your thoughts and insights in the comment section below. Stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for watching.